Today, something regarding the 3 Atlas has transformed. Not in theoretical models or simulations, but in genuine images captured by independent observers just hours apart. The color is changing, the structure is behaving differently, and the features we anticipated would diminish are becoming more pronounced. This isn't mere noise, nor is it just one dataset. Let's examine what is actually shifting. To begin with, the color. Earlier images were characterized by a consistent, smooth green glow. Today, that equilibrium has altered. The inner area is revealing a warmer yellow-gold core, while the surrounding green emission is expanding outward rather than remaining centered. This is not a superficial alteration. It indicates a substantial change in what is driving the emission. Now, concerning the core itself, if this object were either settling or fragmenting, we would expect the center to become softer and more diffuse. However, it is doing quite the opposite. The core is increasingly compact, the brightness diminishes more sharply, and the boundary between the nucleus and the surrounding envelope is more defined than before. This is indicative of ongoing activity, not degradation. Next, let's consider the tail structure. In previous frames, the tail appeared wider and somewhat diffuse. In the most recent images, it is clearer, more directional, and more stable from one frame to the next. In the suppressed versions of the stars, a blue-leaning anticolor component becomes easier to identify. This suggests that the outflow is not erratic. It is organized. And here's what we aren't observing. No secondary cores, no debris clouds, and no abrupt loss of brightness. There is no clear indication of fragmentation. What we are witnessing appears to be a transition rather than a breakup. What's crucial here is the timing. These changes did not transpire over weeks. They emerged between closely timed observations. We see shifts in color balance, core contrast, and tail coherence. Something about the interaction of 3I Atlas with sunlight has recently been altered. Thus, the pressing question is not if something has changed, but rather why. And that's where the discussion truly begins. Now, focus on this frame. This is not a natural color image. It is a heavily processed star's suppressed view meant to isolate the structure. What it reveals is significant. At the center, the core manifests as a compact, high-contrast area encircled by a distinctly asymmetric halo. The red-toned envelope is not evenly spread. It is offset. This indicates that the emission is not expanding uniformly in all directions. Something is molding it. More importantly, the tail is no longer a mere diffuse smear. There's a narrow, linear feature extending cleanly from the core, thin, directed, persistent. This is not how random dust dispersion appears at this distance. Such structures can typically suggest one of two conditions: either a localized active region on the surface or a change in how sunlight interacts with released material. Both scenarios necessitate ongoing activity, not something that is diminishing. If this object were disintegrating, we would anticipate chaos in frames like this: blurring, multiple peaks, or loss of coherence. Instead, we observe organization. This image reveals not collapse, but direction. When aligned with the earlier observed color shift and tightening core, a pattern begins to take shape. So the question evolves. It's not just about what we're witnessing. It's about whether this behavior is transient or signals the onset of a new phase in how 3I Atlas is evolving. The next series of observations will provide much more insight. Now concentrate on this frame. This is a grayscale star-lined capture, which is significant because it eliminates color bias and processing artifacts. What remains shows structure. Observe the central condensation. It is neither fuzzy nor smeared. There's a tight, nearly point-like core nestled within a darker inner halo. This indicates a strong brightness gradient. If this object were merely dispersing, we would expect the center to soften first. Instead, the core remains compact while the surrounding coma fades outward. This is evidence that activity is continuing from a localized source. Next, notice the symmetry. The coma isn't symmetrically round. There's a subtle elongation aligned with the measured position angle, reflecting the same direction observed in today's other datasets. Different processing, yet the same geometry. This is not coincidental. Also, take note of the background. The stars are clear, No trailing artifacts or distortion that could misrepresent a directional feature. Therefore, what you see here isn't motion blur or stacking error. It is inherent to the object. This frame reinforces the same pattern. A stable, compact core with emerging directional structure rather than dissolving. This is significant because it represents a stage where many objects begin losing coherence. 3 Atlas, however, does not. So far, what we know is this. In today's images, 3I Atlas is not fading as we anticipated. The color has shifted. Recent frames are displaying a transition toward a greener, slightly yellowish glow compared to earlier images. The central region remains compact, with the core staying tight and concentrated instead of spreading outward. Internal structures are clarifying, and features we expected to soften are sharpening instead. Additionally, there is a stable directional extension that remains aligned across multiple images taken hours apart. The surrounding glow is not uniform and shows clear asymmetry, suggesting uneven activity rather than random noise. Most importantly, there are no signs of breakup, no fragments, and no secondary objects. The structure continues to be coherent. These changes are not originating from a single observer or setup. They are appearing independently across various locations using different equipment. Thus, what we are witnessing is not a decline, but an increase in definition. And that's where today's update leaves us, with an object that is becoming clearer, not quieter. Ultimately, today's new images, particularly the latest captures from Dan Bartlett, do not indicate chaos or breakup. They reveal change. A shift in color, a shift in texture, and a subtle change in how this object is showing activity. What are your thoughts on what is happening here? Is this a natural transition in what is being released? A surface change we are finally identifying? Or something we have yet to fully observe? Share your opinions in the comments. I read every one. And if you want to keep track of 3I Atlas as new images become available, subscribe, share this with someone following the story, and stay curious.